I think this is one of the biggest medical announcements that this office has ever made, because we're talking about price reductions, as you'll see in a couple of minutes, that are incredible. For many years, Americans have paid the highest prices anywhere in the world for prescription drugs. They paid far more, 10 times, 13 times, 15 times more than other countries for the exact same product. A major reason is that the American consumers have been subsidizing research and development costs for the entire planet. They put all of that on us, and yet they were the beneficiaries too. So it's being changed as of today. The United States had just 4% of the world's population and consumers, only 13% of all prescription drugs, yet pharmaceutical companies make 75% of their profits from the United States. So think of that. We have 4% of the market, 13% of prescription drugs, and yet, Albert, I didn't know you were that violent. I'm surprised you're agreeing to this.
I'm getting better.
No, he's doing the right thing. Thank you. And yet they make 75% of their profits from the American customers, so it's something. That's why I signed an executive order combating this practice, and we signed it very happily a little while ago. Today, Pfizer is committing, as will other drug companies as we go through the weeks, but Pfizer is truly one of the biggest in the world and one of the greatest in the world. Today, Pfizer is committing to offer all of their prescription medications to Medicaid, and it will be at the most favored nation's prices. It's going to have a huge impact on bringing Medicaid costs down like nothing else. I told you that in my first term, I was so proud of the fact that for the first time in 28 years, drug prices came down. And I had a news conference that I explained it was 0.1%, but it was down. And here we're talking about, in one case, over 1,000%. This is a critical step forward to our work and to improve health care, and hardworking, low-income Americans, especially low-income Americans, will be helped so greatly. In addition, Pfizer is agreeing to provide some of their most popular current medications to all consumers at heavily discounted prices of anywhere between 50 and even 100%.
Joining us at the table is CNN Global economic analyst Rana Foroohar. Rana, this has been, I think, a topic of discussion because there are so many ways in which Trump has been screaming socialism and communism, and yet he wants to manage this entire economy by himself.
Yeah.
Putting his hand in literally everything, offering tariffs and then discounts on the tariffs, and then giving rebate checks to people, and then taking shares in private companies, and so on and so forth. How do you see this?
So I would say there's a lot of state capitalism going on here. And by that I mean, it's kind of what China does. It's capitalism. There are markets and people are certainly making profits, but you have the state coming into sectors when it's considered to be of strategic interest. You have the state in some cases censuring individual CEOs, disappearing CEOs in the case of China. Here, not that. But I think that in some ways what both Donald Trump and certain candidates, I will say on the, not candidates, but politicians on the left are doing is really responding to a populist sentiment. And I think that that's the connective tissue here. We are in a very populist moment. The rule books of both parties, I think, are being thrown out, and politicians are looking to do whatever resonates with the hot button topics in the population at the time.
I read last week that Trump was threatening to impose a huge tariff on foreign patented drugs, which many Americans depend on. And that it was supposed to go into effect October 1st. Did that happen?
So it's interesting. With the Trump RX plan, Pfizer, which would potentially be open to those tariffs, is supposedly getting an exemption in order to participate in this plan. So tariffs, and this is a great example of state capitalism, tariffs are being used as a tool, as a cudgel, as a sort of a carrot and a stick for companies as and when. And you never know when the rules are going to change. It could be one thing today, the next thing tomorrow. But this is about holding individual CEOs, individual companies, individual industries in some cases to heel.
On pharmaceuticals, we'll be putting a initially small tariff on pharmaceuticals, but in 1 year,
President
1.5 years maximum, it's going to go to 150%, and then it's going to go to 250%, because we want pharmaceuticals made in our country.
This is not the first time the president threatened pharmaceutical tariffs. So what might this mean for people who rely on medication, not just to stay comfortable, but to stay alive?
Yeah, Arrow, at least in the long term, it could definitely increase the costs of these prescription drugs, the availability. But I say the long term because President Trump has really put this caveat of at least a year and a half before these tariffs are implemented. He says that this is to allow these pharmaceutical companies more time to physically relocate to the United States for more manufacturing, though that could take multiple years. And it's important to note that right now there aren't any blanket U.S. tariffs on pharmaceuticals. As part of that European Union United States trade deal last week, there was a 15% tariff specific for pharmaceuticals from Europe, and that is already a pretty dramatic increase from the 0% that it was before. But we've seen the administration take these procedural steps to get to a pharmaceutical tariff, sector specific. They launched in April what's known as a Section 232 investigation to determine if imports of pharmaceuticals from foreign countries is a threat to national security. That's kind of just the formal step before a bigger tariff is announced. But given this timeline, we won't really know the specific impacts of these tariffs until a year and a half, when President Trump says it'll skyrocket to at least 150%.
Congratulations to President Trump. That's a wonderful thing. Drug prices going down is really important. I think this includes the COVID-19 vaccine, which is why Ron Falkowski's statement was relevant, but also it includes blood clot medication, which I know, people are on across the world.
Which you need after you take the COVID vaccine. Just kidding, just kidding, just kidding.
And, Pfizer is going to, specifically what I liked, is going to bring down the pricing to Medicaid patients, which is really important because those are some of the most vulnerable people in our population that need affordable prices, which Trump said he would dramatically lower specifically for Medicaid patients as well. But it's ironic that the big, beautiful bill is creating chaos for those same people on Medicaid and possibly cutting some people off from accessing Medicaid. But then they're calling for discounted. But then they're calling for discounted prices for those same people who are thinking they may be getting cut off of Medicaid. So it's one of those examples of, you do something like Department of Government Efficiency, and then you have the big, beautiful bill that's like the oxymoron to all the work you've done with the Doge. And this is one of those things where, yes, you lower drug prices, but you also cut a ton of people off of Medicaid, and you're also arguing the government is shut down right now because you won't extend Affordable Care Act subsidies. So at the same time that you're lowering prices, everyone's going to be suffering because you won't have a real conversation with Democrats about, who are, by the way, winning on health care at every single poll. You won't have a conversation with them about how to solve this long term. So nice prices, but who can access it?
You're not happy, let me guess, healthcare, pharmaceuticals. You don't like price controls. Gee whiz, that's a shocker.
Yeah, that's
Forbes on price controls.
Yeah, well, putting price controls on the pharmaceutical industry just guarantees what's happened in Europe. You get less innovation, which means we're going to have a less healthy future.
But if you build here, if you build a pharmaceutical plant here, like a Tylenol plant. No, that was a joke, a bad joke. But if you build a plant here,
gives me a headache.
You won't get the tariff. You won't get tariffed.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be dependent on if you need a medication. They shouldn't be putting on price controls. There are various ways you get plants to locate here, which is part of what they've done in terms of reducing taxes, in terms of reducing regulations. But this force thing of trying to force a trade, that's going to be a two-way street. And we set a terrible precedent for when the bad guys eventually get back into power. And national emergency. Oh, climate change. We know where that's going to lead. So let's do it by the rule book. If they want a tax, pass a tax in Congress. If they want to put on price controls, do it through Congress.
Aren't our generics much cheaper than anything else on the market? It's a small number that we're talking about here.
It's the nose under the tent, camel's nose under the tent. We know where it can lead.
Can I disagree with you for once in my entire life? During COVID, we discovered that we are incredibly dependent on China for not only prescription drugs, but a lot of over-the-counter medications that people depend on. And it was appalling to me that having discovered that, the Biden administration did absolutely nothing to onshore pharmaceutical manufacturing. We've got the entire apparatus in Puerto Rico available to regenerate manufacturing here for pharmaceuticals. So with respect, if it takes putting on tariffs, if it takes draconian measures to get pharmaceuticals made in the U.S., I'm all for it.
Trouble is, taxes on rarely come off. And in terms of China, that's absolutely right. And there are ways to get to the pharmaceutical companies, which the Biden administration did not do. Say, if we've got a national security problem here, Puerto Rico used to have very juicy tax incentives, which is why it went to a great drug manufacturer. Put those incentives back. Puerto Rico needs it. So I've seen this movie before. We can do it here. Just have to do it in a way in which you get real results, and they'll do it more quickly than they will with a gun to their head.
Just a little more than a year ago, when Kamala Harris was campaigning on combating price gouging at grocery prices, this is what Donald Trump said in response to that.
Comrade Kamala announced that she wants to institute socialist price controls. You saw that. Never worked before, never ever worked. This is communist, this is Marxist, this is fascist.
I mean, look, if you're a Democrat, you're probably saying, you know what? Yeah, he should be negotiating drug prices. They've been asking for that for many, many years. And every time Republicans called it socialism. So now it's not socialism because Trump's doing it?
Well, forget about if you're a Democrat. If you're someone who needs these drugs, right, I think you're happy to hear this. Whether it's socialist, capitalist, these drug prices are out of control. A very close friend of the family called us the other day and said, the government just gives me, or my insurance gives me, he's diabetic, type 1 diabetic, the absolute perfect amount of insulin that I need. Can you help me get some more insulin? So if this is going to put this kid in a better position to get insulin for him at a lower price, I don't think anyone cares if it's socialist, capitalist. This is a very unique area. We're not talking about milk. We're not talking about grains.
Arthur, that literally the Democratic Party has been campaigning on this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been decades. I mean, honestly, decades. Medicaid and allowing Medicaid to negotiate drug prices, bringing down the price of insulin. In fact, they actually legislated some of that in 2022. And Mitch McConnell literally called it socialism.
So should we criticize someone who came around to with a good
I'm
idea?
just saying
I don't think so. I think it's great. I wish the government, I wish more people in government were like, you know what? I campaigned on this, but now that I'm thinking about it, that's actually a good idea.
That's not what they're saying. They're just pretending like it never happened.
The authoritarian mirror. I think the scariest thing about Trump isn't what he did, it's what he proved. He proved how easy it is to break a country when you make people choose between truth and belonging. He proved that if you're loud enough, you can drown out facts. And he proved that millions will follow you not because they believe in you, but because you make them feel seen in their anger. He didn't invent cruelty, he just made it fashionable again. He made people proud of the worst parts of themselves. The insults, the lies, the mocking, it wasn't politics anymore. It was an identity. And when the system tried to stop him, the courts, the press, the voters, he turned their resistance into proof of persecution. That's what makes him dangerous. Not his power, but his ability to convince others they're powerless without him. He showed every aspiring strongman on earth that democracy doesn't need to be destroyed. It just needs to be mocked until it collapses on its own. And when that happens, we won't need another Trump, because we'll already be living in his aftermath. Maybe that's Trump's true legacy. Not his buildings, not his rallies, not his wealth, but the lesson he left behind. That democracy doesn't die in darkness. It dies in daylight, cheered on by people who think they're saving it. The next time the crowd chants for strength over truth or loyalty over law, they won't be cheering for Trump. They'll be cheering for the idea he left behind. That power is its own morality. And that's the danger that lingers.